the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time for the Steak for Breakfast Podcast.
It's Friday, May 16th, 2025, and this is the Steak for Breakfast Podcast, episode 590 and 591. Make sure you subscribe to the show. It's available across every downloadable podcasting platform. Find us on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Samsung, or Amazon Podcasts. Check out the Steak for Breakfast link tree to take a show's Instagram, our latest Substack, and verified accounts on X, Getter, and True Social.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the first of two big Friday editions of the show today. I'm Rowan. I'm going to be flying solo as your only host today. And as always, we've got lots of breaking news. We've got full and comprehensive coverage of President Trump's historic trip to the Middle East. We'll spend the entirety of our first show today with our full and comprehensive coverage of President Trump's historic trip to the Middle East. We'll check in on the Republican House and the big, beautiful bill as it's now on life support in the Budget Committee, bringing the latest from there. And former FBI director incites violence against President Trump. Plus, we've got the latest on the Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Turkey and more. We got a great slate of guests coming in here today as well. Indiana Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, Indiana Congressman Marlin Stutzman, and North Carolina Congressman Mark Harris will all be here. But before we get into any of our interviews, let's dive right into the headlines and change the way you consume your news.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
Today, Junior! America!
Steak.
For breakfast! So stand by!
All right, everybody, welcome to the Steak for Breakfast podcast. I'm Roan. I'll be your host for the next couple of hours. If you're a first-time listener, welcome to the show. If you're a long-time listener, welcome back to America's fastest-growing and quickly becoming favorite political podcast on what's turning out to be a busy news Friday. A couple programming notes. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the show. We're available across every downloadable podcasting platform. We prefer Apple and Spotify. Subscribe. Make sure it's downloading to your electronic devices. Rate the show 5 stars, please. Leave a review as well, and then check us out on social media. We're on all of them, but most active on X. We've even got a couple new YouTube channels. Check them out. Subscribe. One cuts the show into 2 parts, which is our 2 episodes, and then the other one is called Steak Tidbits on YouTube. There you can find choice cuts from the show, including some of the greatest moments from our America First interviews. Hope everybody had a good end to the week, and again, happy Friday. So Alan Jacoby, who's usually scheduled to be here on Fridays with us, is a little under the weather. I am myself, but we all know the show must go on. So 6 years, haven't missed an episode, no matter what. And we're not bucking that trend anytime soon. So Alan will probably join us again next week on Friday. Thoughts and prayers out to him. We're running up on Memorial Day weekend as well. So hopefully we'll have Noah in here for one of the upcoming episodes. In addition, busy week, historic week for the Trump administration, I say the very least, but a lot of other moving parts on deck today. You know, the big, beautiful bill up on Capitol Hill is currently on life support and budgetary. We'll get you all caught up to that by the end of the episodes today, but things aren't looking good right now. You know, I knew the Salts were going to do some grandstanding. I knew a couple other people who want more of the EOs in this bill and some real Doge stuff attached to it as well. We're going to make a stand. Some of the great guests here on Steak for Breakfast, at the forefront of that, I see Rep. Keen, Rep. Norman, Rep. Clyde, just to name a few. And we also saw former disgraced and fired FBI Director James Comey's despicable behavior this week. We'll touch on that a little bit as well. But a lot of at least this episode's focus is going to be honed in on the back end of President Trump's historic trip to the Middle East and what a trip it was. Whether it was the honors he was given, the places he was able to tour, the speaking events he gave, or councils, or forums he sat in on. And the way the world leaders of UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia went outside of the normal trends to not only welcome, but promote and in real time cultivate the relationship between these nations and our president. It's something, in some instances, we haven't seen in decades. In others, probably have never seen ever. So, yeah, it was just really an amazing watch this week to see it unfold. And you can't call it anything other than a resounding success for not just the administration and the American people, but for the diplomatic measures and means that this president, Donald J. Trump, is able to go out and work for our country. A little bit of update from the home side. I did mention I'm a little bit under the weather too. A couple people at my work had been sick, and I normally don't get too sick ever. It comes for a day and it goes. But I have had no real feelings of illness, but a chest cough, like a bronchial cough for the last couple of days. And it's just a bit nasty. And you can probably hear it in my voice a little bit, so pardon that. I know it's a little bit more velvety sometimes here on Steak for Breakfast. But, we'll power through. I feel fine. I just get a little bit of a tingle in the back of my throat, and then I cough, and it's all from deep inside the lungs. So working through that. Little League's about to come to a close on Saturday, which also means that our team has made the Majors District Finals. So yay to us. And I tell you guys, it's been like a two-way street doing this whole Little League thing this year. So before I got into my current job, which I guess you could consider sales, I was an educator for a long time. And what went hand in hand with that was coaching high school sports. I coached football, I coached hockey, and I coached track and field. I was the head coach of major programs, senior assistant on some of the others, and just an absolutely enjoyable experience. Probably 10,000 kids over 20 years, came and went through the athletics programs that I was part of, and just to watch them grow and develop and flourish. Some of them, have families of their own now. Some of them still play professional sports, believe it or not. And, I've told you guys this here on the show before, but for some of our new listeners coming in, and according to the downloads, there's new listeners coming in. For sports, that was something that was so important to me and my life growing up because of the way my family instilled it in us. I didn't come from a family of athletes, but, when you grow up in North Jersey, you have diehard sports fans in your family. I mean, you got the Knicks, you got the Rangers, you got the Yankees, you got the New York Giants, just to name a few of some of the other choices you could have as your team. And growing up at the time that I did, I just grew up at times of massive success for a lot of the sports organizations in New York. I saw, 6 or 7 Yankees World Series titles in addition to making a couple others that they didn't win. I saw the New York Giants, win 4 Super Bowls during the time that I've been a fan of them, and made, I believe, another Super Bowl. They got destroyed by the Ravens in the early 2000s. I can remember that. And the Rangers, 1994 was like the year after I fell in love with hockey, and to see the curse get broken after 54 years of nothing was just amazing. I think the first ever day of school I ever missed in my entire life was to ditch and go with some of my family members and friends up to the parade in the Canyon of Heroes in New York City after the Rangers won the Cup in 1994. And then there's the Knicks. I hope they can take care of business tonight and close out the Boston Celtics in this series in 6 games. Man, it is so awesome, though, watching my son grow up, because, we wanted them to do sports, my son and daughter. I wanted my son to do sports like I did. And, but we weren't going to pressure him to do anything. We wanted them to organically fall in love with the sport. So we signed him up for bunches of things. And, long story short, he really gravitated towards football, and then had always played Little League. And he started to become a really good baseball player. So we got him into travel ball. And because he's not the biggest kid, baseball quickly surpassed, for sports that he's good at, even though he's still a hell of a football player. I mean, he's like one of the smallest kids in the team, but he started offense and defense last year and had a hell of a season. He's really blossomed into a big, beautiful baseball player. And where he's short in stature, he's big in skill. And I think that is what has helped him have a lot of success. I arguably think out of the entire district this year, he's probably one of the top 3-4 players, and in some instances, he's been the best. So he finished the season tied for the league lead in home runs. And he batted about 700. Has never been much of a pitcher, but pitched 2 innings in 3 straight playoff games to close all 3 games. And just to watch him kind of come into its own, it's really been awesome. But, it's one of those things that we put him in the situations to make him successful, and he's found a real love there. His whole life resonates around sports now, and that's without any of our influence. And part of that's just growing up from being like a kid that plays with toys a few years ago to a kid that, worries about what he looks like when he leaves the house now. I got a package in the mail the other day from Fanatics, and any sports fans out there will know what that is, addressed to my son. So I called my wife at work. I'm like, hey, did you buy our kids something at Fanatics? Like Yankees or something? And she was like, no. So I waited till he got home, and he's like looking at me, and he's like, don't be mad. And, whenever my kids do something good, they get a good test score, or, they keep the house clean for a week, or do good in sports, I'll Apple Pay him a couple bucks here or there because I'm always shelling out big-time cash for him. Perfect example. My son's growing out of his bats. He has one for travel ball, one for Little League. He's going to be doing All-Stars now for the next month and a half, maybe 2 months, right? So he needs a new bat. He's just gone through the whole season. It's pretty beat up. $900 for 2 bats. The travel ball bat was around $600 after taxes, fees, and shipping. It's just a racket. The Little League bats, $250-ish and change. So we don't really spoil our kids in real time, but when you talk about them having the best of what they need to do their best in sports, we always, whether it's shoes or cleats or gear, never think twice. When they need it, we get it before they need it. So, yeah, there's that. So he opens up this package, and he unfurls this beautiful blue jersey in front of me, and he's like, well, I really want them to win on Friday and go to the Eastern Conference Final, so I bought a jersey for good luck, and he bought a Jalen Brunson jersey for himself and had it expedited shipping to our house using our Apple Pay. So it's crazy to see how a kid that's 11 going on 12 can already do that stuff. But, yeah, man, it's been a wild ride, this whole Little League experience. The kids, their parents, and the team, absolute pleasure of an experience. It's a couple of the kids who have been on teams with my son over the years, in addition to his first real good coach when he was little, all the way back in like minor B. Or if you don't have that where you're from and your kids play Little League, it's the year where like you lose the tee and you lose the machine and you start to go to kid pitch. We had a really good coach. He was a college baseball player, a catcher, I believe, and just really broke things down. That's when my son really started to fall in love with sports. So long story short, we're in the finals. And the people who run this league, coaching, and for anybody that's ever done it, whether you're a volunteer or you did it for pay like I did back in the day when I was like a high school head coach or the offensive coordinator of a football team, etc., it's a massive investment. When you look at coaching stipends or anything like that, you could break it down to like 39 cents an hour. Especially if you do all 3 seasons like I did. You're literally coaching 340 days a year, and that's not even an exaggeration. With off season and travel and club and tournaments and all the things that are interwoven into teams that are good and, want to win for their community, like the school I was at. We played at Qualcomm Stadium a couple times and won championships there for football. Got to the finals once in hockey with a team that had never been more than 500 record. And in track and field, the school was so big between the varsity and the JV teams. Like anytime we went on the road, you're taking 300 kids and, like, no joke, 6 school buses with you to other high schools that you're in charge of, in addition to being in charge of the events that you coach, which in my instance was jumps and relays. And there was an instance for a couple years where I was the boys and girls head coach because They both retired at the same time. They had an intern one come in to be the girls coach. I was the boys when I first took over. And then they left after 1 year, and they're like, well, you did such a good job with it, and you know all the kids. It won't be that bad. It was bad. It was hard. But the people who run this little league out here, it's just like a daddy ball to the nth degree. People that act like big timers and talk down to you instead of... The league promotes sportsmanship, safety, community, and building something. And when you work with the people who run it, they're just all complete assholes. Like, I've never experienced anything like coaching, and anyone that's ever coached before. Like I said, if you coach rec ball, or you coached organized sports, or you've coached travel, it's a fraternity. And there might be rivalries, even within coaching staffs, of people that are up-and-comers, but, you know, with opposing teams. But at the end of the day, there's always like a mutual respect for an adult who puts it all out there to, number one, be a driving force in a young man or woman's life. And number two, make all the sacrifices that goes with doing the job. And there are a lot of them. That's another reason why I stepped back from coaching and took about a decade off before I went back to coach this little league team, because I wanted to invest in growing my kids and my family. And my wife was okay with that, even though she had urged me to get involved when my son started like really getting into sports. But I saw him growing and blossoming in it, and I just supported him. And I feel like I made the right decision. And if we win tomorrow, it'll be like the cherry on top, because it's already been a magic season. You don't see too many little league teams that go like 18-2 during the regular season and walk to the finals, which we essentially did, and have a good opportunity to do it. But yeah, just working with some of these other guys, like the administration of these leagues, I just don't understand. No people skills. You know, everything for their guys or their friends. And then it's like you don't even exist. And when they do have the opportunity, I mean, they treat you like either you're a complete asshole or a complete retard. And, yeah, I hope stuff changes. Because when you look at the job that me and all the dads who came together and did this year, we didn't just go out and do it for our own kids. We made sure that every single kid on that team had the opportunity to be just as good as the best player and be just as involved as the best player and learn and grow and be a part of something special. And sometimes I think like the sports gods smile down and favor those who really do it for the right reasons after having done it for so long. And, yeah, definitely a learning experience for me. The game has changed, but it's more like with the people who run it instead of the kids. The kids are always going to be kids. I mean, listen, you can't figuratively now grab somebody by a face mask and haymaker them with curse words and stuff. I mean, when I played high school sports, I'd get in a three-point stance. If my offensive or defensive coach didn't like something, they would grab my face mask. They would slap the back of my helmet as hard as they can. They would kick me square in the ass. And that was just normal. I remember one time when I was probably a freshman or a sophomore, and instances like that happened. You know, I missed a block in practice. And I think we were just in uppers, 2-a-days, East Coast, 90 degrees, 100% humidity. And I just like ran my shoulder into him and like ran past him, tried to go to the next level. And that guy like slid right underneath me and like walked into the running back, who cut back across and followed me because I was going to the next level. Wound up getting tackled for like a 1-yard gain. The defensive coach, not even the offensive coach, grabbed me by the face mask and gave me this whole 30-second like, oh yeah, you think you're going to play varsity as a sophomore, this, that, and the other thing. You think you're hot shit. You ain't nothing. Grabbed my face mask, gave me a couple shakes, turned my head to go back towards the huddle, and as soon as I started walking there, I mean, kicked me square in the tailbone. I love the coach to death. Actually, I still talk to him. I come from a really good high school, well known for sports back on the East Coast. My school opened up in 1984 when our town expanded. One head coach, still there. It's amazing. I grew up in a really good environment for sports, and that stayed with me until I was done playing after college, and now has been genetically transferred to my children, who are both really good athletes. So that's kind of what's going on my end. Light a candle for us if you're listening on Friday. if you're listening on Saturday, well, say a prayer anyway. If you hear any later than that, you'll have an update on Tuesday on how things went down. But I'm hoping for the best. That's neither here nor there. I think we're going to jump right into the show now. So President Trump and this trip meant so much for so many different things. Restabilizing the region, which has seen a lot of unstable everything over the course of the past decade. I mean, you had the fallout from the end of the Iraq War. You have Iran and all of their proxies. You have the October 7th attack of Hamas on Israel. You have the removal of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. You have what's going on, kind of a power vacuum because they're a puppet state for Iran in Lebanon. And so on and so forth. And man, when President Trump gets into these modes where he knows he can win, it's like the bigger the risk, the better performance we get from President Trump. When it's just something like, oh yeah, it's like a legislative measure or something to do with deregulations or like stuff to do with money, like it's always good. Like, you know, but it's like, I think it's easy for him. When things like this come down, and listen, you could say Donald Trump was as successful as a businessman and an entrepreneur and a television personality and this, that, and the other thing through all the years that he did that. Donald Trump was never greeted by kings and princes and royal guards and all the stuff that we saw happen over the past couple days and commingle with these people in a way where he's just being himself, and you could literally see that these people who are of royalty are in awe of his presence. And not just the princes and the emirs and the prime ministers and the presidents, their generals, their governments, their people just craving to have a little bit of what Donald Trump was coming to offer. And that was to make America great again, believe it or not. His presence in the region and the support with inter-nation allies definitely strengthens the America agenda in the Middle East. It also addresses the elephant in the room, which is Iran. And looks like we've got some good news coming out of that direction by the time this trip was all said and done. But, I mean, listen, when you talk about the diplomacy and how that chapter of the Trump doctrine will go down, whether it was during his first term, dinner in the Forbidden Garden, feeding the fish with Abe, the sword dance in Saudi Arabia the first time. We got like a sword dance to the YMCA this time, which I kind of thought was cool, but it didn't include President Trump. So I was like, whatevs. This man he's a natural. That's all I could say. And his intent is to get the best deals, whether it's safety, whether it's security, whether it's financial, whether it's job creation, whether it's laying down the new rules in how countries are going to do trade with us. He hits home runs on every single one of them. There's people on the other side of the aisle was like, I never really liked Donald Trump, and shit, I always hope he fails at everything, but I have to be honest with you, this was kind of a big fat W for him coming out of the Middle East, because you can't call it anything but. And we're going to pick up right where we left off on our Friday edition of the show. Donald Trump spoke and did like a mini Trump rally for everyone in Saudi Arabia, and then sat down later in the day, or maybe even the next day, on the Gulf Cooperation Council to talk about agenda items in the region, including trade and security. Let's hear the 47th president.
As I said in my address last night, the Gulf nations are at the forefront of creating a stable, peaceful, and prosperous Middle East. And I have to say that I've seen such progress. It's really incredible. I've also seen great unity and friendships. I've spent a little time with you just before this, and I've seen tremendous unity, tremendous friendship, and the whole world is watching the Middle East, and many are watching with envy. You have something very special going on. Incredible opportunities are within reach for this region. If we can simply stop the aggression from a small group of pretty bad actors. The Biden administration created havoc and bedlam by basically being incompetent. but by empowering Iran and its proxies, sending them billions and billions of dollars, senselessly. I couldn't believe it to watch. One of the reasons I said, let's do this again. But what they did was so bad, while turning his back on the Gulf allies. Those days are over. Everybody at this table knows where my loyalties lie, always have. They'll never waver, never. And we'll stand with our friends and partners, and we'll confront the aggression that threatens us all.
And we all know who that is. We're going to get to that in just a second. But again, when you look at the aura that President Trump had during this trip, it's quite remarkable. You know, I have to say, so many trends were broken for the typical state visit. Let's just start off in Saudi Arabia. Air Force One was welcomed by military jets and escorted to the tarmac, where, remember, when Joe Biden went to Saudi Arabia, they held him on his plane for about 30 minutes after landing. No one showed up except some mid-level delegates who got the Biden team over to a hotel where they were going to have their meeting, and the iconic like rock, paper, scissors fist bump between Sleepy Joe and MBS showed how much of a disconnect there was in that relationship. Because again, our government was being ran by senior staffers and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and failed foreign policy experts like Valerie Jarrett and Tony Blinken and Victoria Nuland. And it showed. Now, not only did they roll out the royal purple carpets and air stairs, MBS went out to the tarmac and met Donald Trump coming off the plane. That is not something typically that leaders in that region do. Number one. Number two, it's just way outside of character for MBS, who was like this almost biblical figure of what it is to be the royalist of the royal families in the Middle East, if you know what I mean. And just the overt bro love and affection that President Trump and MBS, or Mohammed, apparently, Your Highness, Your Excellency, any of that stuff was out the window. President Trump referred to him as Mohammed for the entirety of the trip, which just adds another layer to how real this relationship between the two leaders are. It wasn't a sign of disrespect. It was a term of endearment to use his first name, because essentially saying things like that are forbidden and just don't happen. And for as many times as you saw a real organic smile from MBS and how he would pat his heart and then open his palms to President Trump, this is hopefully the beginning of what could be a major turnaround for the Middle East that has been needed since decades before the first Gulf War, like when Iraq and Iran were feuding. And what I think is going to be the agenda item that gets us over the top is whether or not we're going to China Iran, put them out on an island, let them wither, and crawl back to the negotiation table, or strike a big, beautiful deal with them, have them abandon their nuclear aspirations, and be welcomed back into the global community, which I'm sure the major players in the Gulf, like the Saudis, who rely on energy and tourism, and UAE and Qatar, who rely on tourism and the rise of the space race in the Middle East and the production of AI at the levels they've done there, etc., probably all want for stability. Because listen, nothing hinders tourism in your country when there's missiles and rockets flying over it, heading from the nation of Iran to the country of Israel, if you know what I mean. So this was something on all of the stops President Trump maybe didn't want to, but had to address to the regional neighbors. of Iran. And he brought it up at this speaking event during the Gulf Cooperation Council. And I got a clip of it. Let's hear it.
I want to make a deal with Iran. I want to do something if it's possible. But for that to happen, it must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. I don't imagine there's anybody at this table or anybody in this room that would say they can. I'm strongly urging all nations to join us in fully and totally enforcing the sanctions that I just placed on Iran, and we also place secondary sanctions, which are in certain ways even more devastating. Iran, as you know, had no money when I left office. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah. There was no attack. There was no thought of attack. There would have been no attack if I were president.
And we all know this. I mean, Iran was on the doorstep of internal collapse and revolution. But thanks to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Jake Sullivan, Valerie Jarrett, Victoria Nuland, and friends, Iran is now rich again and is funding major terrorism proxies all over the region and essentially the world. President Trump is not your typical cookie-cutter president. And what I mean by that is, regardless of the history between the United States and Iran, even with the big exclamation point out there, knowing that there are people around the world and maybe even in the United States who are from Iran and would, given the opportunity, try and assassinate President Trump. All of that stuff would be out the window if they could reach a deal. Because Donald Trump does what's better for not himself, not his legacy, nothing personal, for the country and for the world. You know, when you look at the times that Donald Trump has reminded us that he wanted major players in the world to de-arm and unfund such ridiculous military budgets, in addition to the denuclearization of the planet, which he proposed before he was cheated out of the 2020 presidential election, world peace means more to Donald Trump than anything. Like, he wants to make America great again. But if he could do so and at the same time make the world a better place, listen, I know he's a 100% sell on that. And he just wants to remind the people who are doing business with us now, you can't be buying your energy and in turn giving money to fund terrorism to Iran until they're ready to come to the negotiation table and stop doing that. It's impeding a lot of different things in a lot of different places. It's putting some of the other countries that President Trump is trying to work with, like China and Russia, in a bad spot too, because they're both allies with Iran. And to get some of these major conflicts resolved, whether it's kinetic, like in Ukraine, or has to do with trade and tariffs, like with China, Iran's a major player in this game. And President Trump knows that. So he wanted to remind everybody in the region, like, you don't need to kiss their ass because we're closing the walls in on them. And soon they'll be choked out and they'll have to make a decision. What are they going to do? And I hope it is for the greater good and more peace. You know, and when President Trump left Saudi Arabia, before he went to visit the troops over in Qatar, he was whisked back to the airport and the tarmac much in the same way. Big military presence, jets escorting out, horses, swordsmen, royal guardsmen, and again, MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, having just like this big emotional farewell between the two, including when Donald Trump got to the top of the stairs and before we went into Air Force One, they both kind of did like touch your heart and then extend your hand out to the other person like you're sending love in either direction. It's a big deal. Like the respect that goes into acknowledging the President of the United States, much in the same way that they do each other as the heads of royal families, is just, there is no more respect above that outside of probably religious means. And it was just really good to see our president go in there and do the things that he needed to do for our country and reaffirm to everyone that these relationships are stronger than ever and still have room to grow. Now, before Donald Trump took the stage in Qatar, remember, he was traveling with a delegation of major administration officials. I believe Witkoff was there. Obviously, Secretary of State Marco Rubio accompanied him. SecDef, Pete Hegseth. And so the opening act was Theo Vaughn. So President Trump had Theo Vaughn come in and warm up the troops with a little comedy act. It was pretty cool. Probably a little influence from Barron there as well. But it's definitely what our men and women out in the region need. And then Pete Hegseth took the stage and continued to warm up the troops ahead of President Trump speaking. I pulled a clip of him. Let's hear that.
I look out into this audience and I truly see the eyes of American strength, the eyes of American deterrence, the eyes of Americans who put America first. So on behalf of a grateful nation, I want to thank you for your willingness to take the prime of your life to raise your right hand to defend our Constitution and our great nation. We salute you. We thank you and your families these 6,000 or 7,000 miles away.
That warrior ethos is back. And all the men and women who are stationed at, I'm probably going to butcher it, but the Al Udeid Air Force Base in Qatar, loved hearing from their big, beautiful Secretary of Defense. Now, Donald Trump took the stage shortly thereafter, and of course was going to hype up the troops and get them ready to go to hear a little bit about making America great again, especially in the region. Let's hear it.
No visit in the Gulf would be complete without stopping to salute the people who keep America safe, strong, and free, and the patriots of the United States Army, Navy, Space Force. I love Space Force. That's I have to say, that's my little baby. You know, I started that. They said, that will never work. Oh, it worked. You know, we were way behind Russia and China, and now we're way, way ahead of everybody. So Space Force, I'm very happy. That was not since the Air Force has that happened. So we created a force, and it's a big force, and it's a brilliant force. So Space Force, thank you for doing such a great job. The Marines, and of course, the United States Air Force. Al Udeid is the home of the legendary 379th Air Expeditionary Wing, known as the Grand Slam Wing. We also have the 1st Expeditionary Theater Support Group. You got them all. And let's not forget the top-notch Army soldiers from the 11th Air Defense Artillery, the Imperial Brigade. Thank you, fellas. That's great. We also have the 8th Expeditionary Air Mobility Squadron, known as Mighty Ochos. Where are the Ochos? We don't want to fight with them. All of you are the tip of the spear. You're the finest we have. Anywhere in the world, you're the finest we have. You're the finest anyone has in the fight against the enemies of civilization. You're the people that are defeating chaos, combating terror, defending our interests, supporting our allies, securing our homeland, and making America incredibly proud. And you know what? Making America great again. That's what's happened. It's happened very fast. Happened very fast.
And you just know the reaction from President Trump in his adornment to our men and women in uniform. Absolutely knows that he can't get his Make America Great Again agenda done without them, and completely gives them every single tool they need to be so much more successful on the battlefield than we have had over the course of the last 4 years under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Guys, wherever you're listening to the show today, hope you're enjoying the first of 2 big Friday editions of the Steak for Breakfast podcast. Follow us across all major downloadable podcasting platforms. We prefer Apple and Spotify. Subscribe to the show for free. Make sure it's downloading to your electronic device. Rate the show 5 stars, and please write a review. And then check us out on social medias. We're on all of them, most active on X. We've even got a couple of new YouTube channels. Check them out as well. Haven't mentioned our great guest lineup coming in today. It's a busy day up on Capitol Hill, unfortunately. We'll get to that a little bit later in the shows, but we're going to have Indiana Congresswoman Victoria Spartz at the end of this segment. we'll catch up with North Carolina Representative Mark Harris to round out this edition of Steak for Breakfast and our one and only interview block. In our second edition of the podcast today, we'll be with Indiana Congressman Marlin Stutzman. So he'll be joining us for the first time, and I'm sure it's going to be a great interview. Getting back to President Trump visiting the troops, definitely going to outline what his duties are as Commander-in-Chief and how his reprioritization of the military all goes into the MAGA experience. Let's check it out.
But the real strength of our military doesn't come from its fighter jets. It really comes from our people. That's you. It comes from our people. You're unbelievable people. The aptitude and all of the things you have to do what you do. You know, I look at some of those engines, and I'm a pretty smart cookie. I would tell you I'm real smart. And I look at you, and you take those engines apart and put them back together, blindfolded, and fix them up. It's amazing what you're able to do. And then to fly them, just incredible. You're incredible. You're a very special group of people. And that's why in my 2026 budget includes across the board. Maybe you don't want it. Look, for the good of the country, you don't have to take it. Pay raises for each and every one of you, substantial pay raises. But you don't have to take it.
Much deserved. He turned around and looked at them, so they're going nuts now.
You don't have to take it. You can go to your commanding officer and say, "Sir, I'd rather not take that pay. I love my country, sir. I refuse to take it." Anybody here, raise your hand, please, if you refuse to take it. Let's see here. All right. Well, at least we have smart people.
There you go.
So you do your duty for us, and as Commander-in-Chief, I will always do and fulfill my duty to you. That's what.
Yes, sir. What a night and day difference from Sleepy Joe Biden. President Trump had flowers for Pete Hegseth as well. I mean, he's done such a good job. He's definitely was identified early as the scalp Democrats wanted first during the confirmation process, and then obviously with the fallout from the non-scandal known as Singlegate. President Trump has had the back of Pete Hegseth, as we've seen military recruitment numbers through the roof, the ending of DEI and transgender ideology in the military, and the refocus, as they put it, back to the warriors ethos to embody and empower our brave men and women in uniform to carry out the tasks and the jobs they need to do to make our country safe. Let's hear it.
I want to recognize a true warrior, and that's our Secretary of Defense. They put him through hell, the radical left did, and he's incredible. You know, he went to the best schools, he did the best stuff. He's a smart guy, and he's a great guy, and I just listened to his words standing backstage when he was speaking, and he really has it right on the peg. Pete Hegseth, he's going to be great. You're going to love this guy. You're going to love him.
Good stuff. Well-deserved recognition for the job he's done so far. I think SecDef Pete Hegseth is just getting started. You know, he's working with one of our great friends, Sean Parnell, over there at the Department of Defense. They've got a rapid response coordinator in the media component who we know well here on Steak for Breakfast as well. That's Kingsley Wilson. And that team has gotten off to such a great start in regards to reshifting the focus back on our troops and the missions that it is going to be a force to be reckoned with again very, very soon. We did get some classic Trump, obviously a little bit of comedic spin on his visit there and during his speech. I don't know who was intertwining some of these instances or reference points back to throughout the course of it, but whether it was, you know, talking to delegations of Middle Eastern businessmen, if it was addressing the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia and the delegation that was there, the AI community and those involved in energy in places like Qatar and UAE. President Trump had these little intricacies woven into his speeches that allowed for him to not only promote the art of the weave, but bring a little bit of that comedic aspect that we've all come to know and love from our Commander-in-Chief. Check this out.
For World War I, because we won that war too. But think of it, I'm calling. Now, we love France, right? But I think we did a little more to win the war than France did. Do we agree? You know, I don't want to be a wise guy. But when Hitler made his speech at the Eiffel Tower, I would say that wasn't exactly ideal. And I called up the president, Macron, good guy, by the way. Donald, we are celebrating our victory over the Germans. Oh, that's wonderful. No, we don't take credit for what we do. And I said, what the hell? Every country I've spoken to in the last week is celebrating the war but us. Isn't that terrible? So we're going to be doing holidays. But I said it has to be a working holiday because, you can only do so many of them. We have a lot of holidays. I'm not so sure we should have them, and you don't have to go to work. Our country has to go to work.
Yeah, we do have to go to work. And, he's talking about the differences between the end of World War II and victory in Europe. Obviously, World War I as well, and recognizing that big victory in addition. And he does make a lot of sense. We unprioritize things in this country and reprioritize woke bullshit like Juneteenth and some of the other absolute jokes of holidays we have here. Meanwhile, things like Thanksgiving and Easter and holidays like that aren't recognized at the federal level. So I'd like to see a little bit of reshuffling. I know Columbus Day ain't going anywhere. President Trump has already reaffirmed that. And another thing he's confirmed as well is what the mission of the United States military is to be. That's not to go around starting forever wars and getting bogged down in third world countries trying to do regime change. It's bringing conflicts to a close. Let's check it out.
As president, my priority is to end conflicts, not start them, but I will never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the United States of America or our partners. And this is one of our great partners right here. When we're threatened, America's military will answer our enemies without even thinking about it. We have overwhelming strength and devastating force.
We certainly do. Just ask ISIS, just ask the Houthis and organizations of that manner. Probably a lot of ones we don't even know about as well, with all the special ops that are going on around the planet. So after addressing the troops, President Trump would jump right into a sit-down meet and greet with the Prime Minister, the Emir, the royal delegate there. They sat before a congregation of the press and began to field questions and answers. President Trump obviously was going to shower his guests with compliments after the amazing welcome they had set up for him and allowment of President Trump to go and address the troops in the nature we just heard as well. Let's check it out.
Thank you very much. And this has been a very interesting couple of hours. We discussed the world. We discussed Russia and Ukraine, where you've been a tremendous help in so many different ways. We certainly discussed Iran, where it's been really an interesting situation. I have a feeling it's going to work out. I think it's going to work. It's got to work out one way or the other. We know it's going to work out. But you were of great help. And other things, but in particular trade. The trade is Kelly's telling me from Boeing, that's the largest order of jets in the history of Boeing. That's pretty good. And that's 140, was that a 140 or 160? Well, yeah, but you're right, it's actually 200, including the 40, so it's over $200 billion. But 160 in terms of the jets, that's fantastic. So that's a record, Kelly, and congratulations to Boeing. Get those planes out there, get them out there. But I just want to thank you. We've been friends for a long time, long before politics. Well, for you it was politics, for me it wasn't, right? But we've been friends for a long time, and this is an outstanding man. He's a great man, and we're going to help each other. The United States is in a very strong position militarily. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. You're buying a lot of that equipment, actually, and I think we're going to see some of it in action tomorrow at the, we won't call it an air fair, but it's going to be sort of an air fair. We're going to be shown a display that's going to be incredible. They have the latest and the greatest of our planes and just about everything else. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun and very interesting, but I just want to thank you for the friendship, for the long-time friendship. And again, long before any of this stuff, we just liked each other. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. but we always had a very special relationship. And we came from Saudi Arabia, where we have another great man over there that's a friend of yours. And you two guys get along so well and like each other. You sort of remind me a little bit of each other, if you want to know the truth. They're both tall, handsome guys that happen to be very smart. But he's also a very special guy, and it's good to see all the relationships forming in the Middle East, because the Middle East is really being talked about all over the world, and we're having a lot to do with it. We're helping a lot, but they're doing a tremendous job. So I just want to thank everybody very much for being here. I want to thank the media. The media's.
Well, we'll get into that one in a second. You know, again, it's the massaging of egos also, and the mutual respect shown from our president to a lot of the rulers of these Gulf states that's allowing for the alliance between them to become solidified as well. And again, this is all part of the art of the deal via peace through strength, because the mission objective here is to either bring Iran in or isolate them unto the point of internal destruction, much like we almost saw towards the end of the first Trump administration. So a little bit of the art of the deal going on there. And then, you know, President Trump, again, was talking about how the media had actually provided fair coverage, not just for the relationship building and diplomatic measures that were being accomplished in the Middle East, but for all of the deals, the big financial ones, trillions that were being secured for the United States. Let's hear it.
Beautiful. I just want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the media. The media, I have to say, has been very fair. They've been very fair. They've been terrific, actually. I was watching some of our, normally they would not say good things, but they're having a hard time saying bad, because this is a record tour. There's never been a tour that will raise, it could be a total of $3.5–4 trillion. This just in this 4 or 5 days. And it's from great people. And our relationship now is very strong with Saudi Arabia. Nobody's going to be bothering that relationship. Nobody would be able to break that relationship because of my relationship with the Crown Prince and the family. The relationship is really strong. And when you talk about Qatar, the relationship is equal. I mean, it's just like nobody's going to break that relationship. We have never had a relationship with Qatar as strong as it is now. You know that better than anybody. And they're very happy, and we're going to protect you. We're going to protect you. That's the one thing you need, maybe. But I don't think you're going to need too much of that. And I said last night, it was a great meeting, great everything. They brought in Lee Greenwood to sing. It was a beautiful evening, and I appreciate it.
And that's another thing, you know, these business leaders and members of the royal family in places like Qatar, they want that Trump experience. They want the rock star personality. They want to hear the art of the weave and hang on every word as Donald Trump tells stories from his past and then encapsulates it all around the narrative that he's trying to build. They want YMCA and God Bless the USA and a little bit of the Trump dance. And, you know, that's part of the overall experience. Again, what Donald Trump does on the world stage would make P.T. Barnum blush. He is literally the greatest showman. And it's with a combination of his business savvy, with his intellectual brilliance, and how he's kind of tied that into how he handles diplomatic measures, which have really contributed to the massive success that the United States is seeing now, both in securing these deals and spreading American diplomacy around the globe and definitely in the region there. So we're going to cut it at that as we're getting ready to jump in with Indiana Congresswoman Victoria Spartz. We're going to jump right back into this after we're done with her. But before we even do that, let's have a first check-in with one of our partners.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Battleborn Coffee Roasters. They're law enforcement family owned, and they produce some of the best available specialty grade coffee. That means all those beans have gone through an extensive process to remove all defects. Battleborn researches all their sources, farms, and milling stations to make sure you're not getting any pesticides or chemical fertilizers. Sit back and have a cup of their borderline Mexico Chiapas blend while you're out sitting on an X or sitting in the office. High quality coffee from high quality people. Use promo code STEAK for 20% off your first order. Make sure you go check them out at battleborn.coffee.
All right, joining us next on the show today, this Big Friday edition of the Steak for Breakfast podcast. She's the Congresswoman who represents Indiana's 5th Congressional District, which means we're welcoming back Representative Victoria Spartz. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure to host. I know it's a busy time. You cut some out for us, and we're going to jump right into it. Listen, I want to talk geopolitics before we get up onto the hill, because all the reps that are coming in here, they're giving us their angles. You're definitely going to give us yours. I can't wait to hear it. But we do have to start with President Trump's historic trip to the Middle East. There's a lot of moving parts going on here. Everything from re-smoothing over the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia, which I think was very rocky during the Biden-Harris administration, securing defense contracts, talking about AI, getting the biggest Boeing airline contract in the history. And then there's all the side stuff going on. Apparently there's now negotiations with Syria and maybe reformalizing them with the rest of the Western world, in addition to some back channels working real hard to bring an end to the conflict in Russia and Ukraine. You know, President Trump likes to keep everybody on their toes. He's definitely doing it this week and in only a couple days. How do you see this trip so far, and what does it mean for America diplomacy now that, we've got President Trump back in the White House? And I think a lot of the collective world is breathing a sigh of relief about it.
Well, I think the president understands where the challenges are and where the issues are, and he understands how important it is to stabilize the Middle East. And I think it's a very difficult, important regions, and he does a lot of special operations, and he understands that he needs to be there personally to show strength, leadership, and move some countries into our direction away from China and some other adversaries that they've been working with. So I think it's important, and they, hopefully will be resolving some of the issues. But I think him being there personally, engaged with a lot of leaders in very, very complicated regions, it's crucial to be able to, achieve some results were very important and deter Iran from further aggressions and getting nuclear weapons, which is very, very dangerous, and help Israel, our very strong ally, to hold the ground in the region and truly, help to deal with terrorism and other issues that they've been dealing for a while. So I think that is a very, very crucial trip, and I'm glad that he prioritized it.
Now, when you see the countries that he's visiting, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and obviously Qatar, and some of the deals that are going to be worked out over the next couple of days, I do think the most interesting component to all this, and it goes into the elephant in the room, which is Iran and the destabilization of the region that they're always seeming to be behind, is reformalizing relations with Syria. Also talking a lot about Lebanon as well. These are two of Israel's contingent border countries. They have had very rocky roads to where they're at now, obviously, with the removal of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, and obviously the power vacuum that they've had in Lebanon for a number of years, basically being coaxed by Iran to, give Israel the hardest of times in support of their terrorist activities. Now, when you see President Trump making such open obligations to want to include these countries and bring them back to the world stage and lift a lot of the sanctions, which is part of the reason why Iran uses it as an incentive. It's like, well, the United States isn't giving you anything, so why would you work with them on Israel? This seems to be kind of a little bit of a masterclass to, in the same way we did with China and tariffs and trade, are now putting Iran in their own region out on an island to say, like, hey, he's taking care of the Houthis, he's taking care of ISIS, he's bringing in some of your allies back to the global community. When are you going to come to the table and want to make some deals with the United States as well?
Well, listen, I think the president understands that, U.S. leadership is important. And unfortunately, we abandoned some of these regions that had terrible policy, appeasing adversaries. And, they create a lot of problems in countries with poor populations and create radicalizing people and becoming a threat to us and the rest of the world. So he understands that he needs to be there, need to deal with very complicated countries, but people trust that he means business. And the leaders, they understand that he puts his money where his mouth is, and that's extremely important. It's just not just messaging talk. He backs up his actions, and it's important because when we're not there, then you have countries like Russia and Iran causing a lot of headaches in China. So we need to be there. There's very important region, important countries in the region for the global stability, also for energy issues, energy security, worldwide energy security. So we have realistic energy policy. These countries are important and they're complicated to deal with a lot of internal drama, let me say that, But I think he's trying to meet with all of the sides of this issue, which is very good. He's not picking one side or another, and try to move them in the national interest of the United States. And that is extremely important. And we have to deal with Syria. Unfortunately, us abandoning the situation there allows Syria, turn into really terrorist heaven.
Yep.
And ability for Iran to really use, and Russia to use it as a ground to advance their interests further.
Well, you make a lot of sense there. And, talking about tying this into things going up on Capitol Hill right now, Congresswoman, we're just out of the first 100 days, a couple weeks out. There was a lot of things, including border security, that President Trump was able to get done. It's not like we aren't seeing the pushback from the Democrats and how they weaponize lawfare, the federal judges to injunct a lot of the things that are going, to take some time to work out for the American people, unfortunately. But I think when you start looking down the road a piece and where we've gotten to this point, I think maybe the next 100 days, not just for the Trump administration, but working alongside Congress is probably going to be what the make or break moment is for this moment in time to ensure that you guys are heading into the midterm election cycle on the right foot. Kind of want to get your commentary on how you feel about that narrative, because, listen, you always like to buck the trends. You are definitely someone that adheres to the pledge you made to the constituents in your district to have real cuts, to be fiscally responsible, and, not just go with the flow. That's why we love to have you here on the show. We want to hear kind of where you're at this point and get a little update from Capitol Hill.
Well, that's why President Trump and I have a lot in common. That's so that we like each other. And I like how he does things, because sometimes when you deal with the swamp, you need to do special operations.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you have to think outside of the box. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. And we need to deliver results. And he understands that he has to deliver results. Talk is cheap. We have problems. We need to deal with them. We inherited too many problems. So it's very difficult for this institution to govern. But ultimately, this reconciliation is going to be President Trump's legacy in a lot of ways. What is he put in the law? That's what really going to have more long-term effects, on the country. Executive orders can be helpful, but ultimately you've seen what's happened last time, what Biden did, with all good executive orders that President Trump had. So I think it's important to put things in the law. Congress needs a lot of work. Let me tell you, the institution's been broken for a long time. We have to really start making some incremental strides. Unfortunately, I don't think this reconciliation is going to be as good on some of the issues, including on issues of uncontrolled spending that Democrats put in. The magnitude of issues they created, it's so material that is just no one can even comprehend. People don't understand what they've done, the moving baselines from 4.5 to 7 trillion, using COVID as an excuse, and money laundering from the federal government to their friends. And a lot of them are sitting in New York, a lot of monopolies. So it's a problem right now. But I think we'll try to do at least some good things, positive things on the tax cuts, at least, help smaller businesses. I think,
Sure.
There are a lot of good things going to be there. Unfortunately, I don't see us be able to do some serious reforms. And unfortunately, big special interest groups and Democrats colluded together to attack. So they're spending a lot of money on telling people lies so they can protect their cartels and they can protect the fraudulent money they're getting. And I'm not sure if we really will be able to fight that battle and deliver as much as we should. So we might need to go to plan C, dealing with that issue. But at least we need to get some stuff done, deregulation and tax cuts to move the economy forward. And then we still maybe at least fix few things in these bills that at least we can fix on the fiscal stuff. But it's not going to be as probably impactful in the way how it should be, and we'll have to figure out what to do next.
And why is it that there's such a divide, like galaxies apart, on actual savings and cost reduction coming from the upper chamber compared to the lower? It seems like for the most part, House Republicans were kind of in line with, like you said, lining up some of the things, maybe not going to be as great as proprietary, but at the same time be able to get some stuff done for the American people. But then when you look at some of the rhetoric that's just come out of the Senate leadership this week, it looks like they want to completely change the bill around once you guys are done marking it up in the House.
Well, I will see. I haven't seen any leadership from the Senate for a while. And this is the
I
people,
like
they
it.
have 6-year term. It's very difficult for the House really to work on the laws and policies. Everyone goes from one election to another. Everyone is pretty much almost getting ready to the next one. We just finished with the first one. So the 2-year terms are very, very difficult to really deal with large issues. So that's why senators have 6-year terms, and they do nothing. So I want to see what they're actually going to deliver, because they do a lot of grandiose talk, but the Senate sent us a bill to save $4 billion over 10 years. It's insulting. We borrow 4.5 a day.
Right.
The instruction they sent, they were insulting to send the instruction they sent the House. I think our instruction were not as good as they should be, but they really put it to the level where now they try to dilute it to nothing, pretty much just do like a fake accounting to pretend like we're dealing with spending, because, there are a lot of rules that should be really legal. Biden was able to use in mandatory spending that ballooned the whole spending without congressional approval, which I don't know how is that even constitutional, but that's a different conversation, how much power we given to the executive branch, which we shouldn't, so I think it's going to be, so I'm going to see what the movers and shakers in the Senate are going to deliver, because I haven't seen them working on anything, and it's all about the money. They're afraid of big special interest groups spending enormous amount of money in super PACs attacking all of us, and unfortunately we don't have too many warriors out here that willing to fight for the republic.
It's the absolute truth there. One of the things you guys are also looking at is healthcare and Medicaid. There is a system that is set up for people that need it. However, there are a lot of, especially coming out of the pandemic, able-bodied Americans who just enjoy a lot of the luxuries that run up the national debt, make spending continue to be out of control, and contribute to a lot of the other things, like allowing other people, especially illegal aliens, to reap some of these benefits that are set up for specific kinds of demographics, including ones who aren't able-bodied to work, American citizens and things of that nature. When you guys are tackling this issue head on, and I know this is something that the House really wants to deliver on, the Democrats have spun it every which way, but you know what? The increases to Medicaid show that there's not going to be any long-lasting cuts. It's just going to be done in a way that it's getting to the people that actually need it, or that it was intended for, and how you're kind of working on this in the moment right now.
Well, I said we're not even truly coming after money laundering in Medicaid when they were allowed to. So they cut in benefits for people with disability, but overbilling Medicaid, insurance, and hospitals 3 times more than Medicare on top. So they have the state-directed payments that Biden administration issued a rule last year to allow them overbilling, at the private insurance rate. So they charge the federal government at very high private insurance rate, but people are losing benefits. That's money laundering. The federal government, this is illegal. They should never. So we couldn't even cap it at the Medicare rate, for the, all of this, we're grandfathering in this payments. We just say, well, the future one will be, but the current, all of the ones that they're stealing from the American taxpayers, we allow that to get through. We'll give a bunch of loopholes and work requirements. We actually said, well, we're legalizing Medicaid for illegals, at a higher rate, at 80% rate, you imagine will be then for people with disabilities. So we pretty much allow them to give Medicaid to illegals and cut benefits for Americans.
Yep.
How is that normal? And I think, but the lobby is so powerful here because they make so much money. We're creating cartels now, hospital cartels in New York, financing in foreign countries in Europe and South America, pay no taxes, controlling businesses, media, and pay no taxes. They're tax exempt. The executive makes millions of dollars. This is just out of control, but they have so much political power now. They accumulated. They pretty much own 80% of doctors now, hospitals. Yep. By law, doctors cannot own hospitals. There's a huge monopoly, cartel powers, and they're not even under antitrust. They're exempt because they're non-for-profit, tax exempt. So the antitrust stuff doesn't even apply to them. It's brilliant, and they're funneling this money through mandatory spending, through rules that Biden allowed them to do. It's not even goes through appropriation process. Congress never looks at that. And unfortunately, their power is so significant that we're only like stopping the damage. But I said, at least, we're not reforming how to make these programs better for the people they intended for. At least let's stop some of these loopholes that really destroying us fiscally.
And then when you see President Trump sign that executive order to level the playing field when it comes to the cost of prescription medications, it is crazy. Not that third world countries, but modern industrialized countries, allies like the UK, they'll pay a tenth of what Americans have to pay for some of the same exact drugs. And the accessibility they have to it is just incredibly easier financially than it is here in the United States. You talk about the cartels, you talk about the super PACs and all the influence that's kind of preserving the bubble around the big pharma cartel. Hitting them in the wallet with the way President Trump is looking to do it with this executive order is probably a good start to getting there.
Listen, he actually did even more powerful executive order on price transparency in February. And that is really, really important one. And I hope, we need to put pressure on his administration and his agency actually start implementing them, because they have to issue rules. And it's been 90 days. And I'm very disappointed that they still don't have drafted rules to implement that. But that is actually would allow the American people to see how they're getting screwed. Because I think when American people will see what they get in charge and how much it's really cost, and I think people will be very, very pissed off. And I think they're afraid of that, because Americans being really, just generally screwed by large healthcare cartels, insurance, PBMs, hospitals. And that was the challenge is. And I think the price transparency will show the people what really the cost and what is really the price of healthcare should be, and not what we're paying. And if you look at all of the money they're making on us, this is just something the federal government subsidizing. How many, what their CEOs are making that we're giving them, but people losing benefits, going bankrupt. 1 in 7 Americans insolvent on medical debt, destroying people opportunities, people not getting the right healthcare services. We have some of the worst outcomes from developed countries. Some of them spend more money than anyone else per person, but has the worst outcomes. They're just not acceptable. I think this has to be fixed. It's one of the biggest things. And I'll be working with his administration and people here. He has some good people on his team that care about this issue to make sure that executive orders get implemented. And it maybe will help us then to move the needle when American people see that and get really pissed off what's really happening, maybe move the needle to start draining the swamp.
They made some really good choices with the administration officials that are in there, and they're working with great people up on Capitol Hill, like yourself, Congresswoman. Listen, always a pleasure when we catch up with you. We don't have you on the show enough, but whenever we can, it's such a good piece for our listenership to kind of really understand what's going on in between all the narratives that you get in the drive-by headlines you see on cable news. You shoot straight. That's why we absolutely love you and support you here on the show. We've got everything live linked in our show description, including a link to your congressional website. They can check out your newsletter, all the great work you're doing up on Capitol Hill and in District. Where can we find you on social media? We'll live link that as well.
It's at the Rep Sports, SPARTZ, and it's, you can always update you, but always sign up to my newsletter too. And, I'm in the trenches on a lot of these issues, and we have to be all in the trenches. Messaging doesn't matter. You have to be in the trenches, and that's what President does. He goes in the trenches to deal with issues, to understand what's happening and start resolving them. We have a lot of good serious issues, but we have a lot of good people that willing to take some hills. And we cannot take every hill, but some hills we have to take. And I think that is extremely important for Republicans to show that we can deliver and not to be intimidated and not to be silenced by the other side. They're very aggressive. These people, very, very aggressive, very radical, very brutal, but they cannot intimidate and silence us. We need to do the right thing for the country. President is willing to do it, and Congress will need to step up to help him to deliver.
This is not just the Congresswoman who busts through those fake news narratives. She actually punches back as well. She's representing Indiana's 5th Congressional District, Representative Victoria Spartz. Thanks for joining us on the show today, Congresswoman. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
One of the things for the people that are interested in the military that I asked to look into, the F-35, we're doing an upgrade, a simple upgrade, but we're also doing an F-55. I'm going to call it an F-55, and that's going to be a substantial upgrade. but it's going to be also with two engines because the F-35 has a single engine. I don't like single engines. Even this man, he's the best in the world at engines, but on occasion, I know you won't admit this, if an engine goes out, it's nice to have 2, 3, or 4. That's why I like the 747. It's got 4. And but today they're getting very big, and it's a little more cost-saving to have 2 very, very big ones. But no matter how good, they tell me, Larry, the engine will never go out. Well, I think it goes out on occasion, very rarely. And we're going to do an F-55, and I think if we get the right price, we have to get the right price. And that'll be 2 engines and a super upgrade on the F-35. And then we're going to do the F-22. I think the most beautiful fighter jet in the world is the F-22, but we're going to do an F-22 Super, and it'll be a very modern version of the F-22 fighter jet.
All right, jump back into the news portion of the show here. Second news segment on the first of 2 Big Friday editions of the Steak for Breakfast podcast. I'm Sil Rohn. And it was great catching up with Indiana Congresswoman Victoria Spartz. She's a straight shooter. That's why we love her to have her here on the show. There are plenty of congressmen and women that could come in here and talking about promoting the America First agenda. But when you want a little bit of insider insight onto what's really going on, not just on the House floor and within the conference, but behind closed doors and definitely in committee, Representative Spartz has always shot it straight here on Steak for Breakfast. That's why she'll always have a microphone to tell her story and her office's perspective anytime she wants. And that was President Trump, still in Qatar, talking about big upgrades coming for some of our most elite military jets. It looks like we're going to have a version 2 now of the F-22 Raptor, which is President Trump's favorite military jet currently. And it's going to be, I guess, F-22 Super, which is going to have engine upgrades in addition to some other stuff. And then the current F-35, which has had its fair share of problems, and throughout the course of both of Donald Trump's terms in office, he has been a little bit critical of its design and ineffectiveness compared to some of its other next-gen, flight brethrens, if you will. And that's going to be transitioned into a twin-engine model, which would be the F-55. Moving forward, he was talking to the CEO of Boeing, who was helping secure all these mega deals for planes throughout the region, but at the same time hoping that because of the amount of contracts that President Trump is securing for them, they will come back with reasonable ones for us in regards to the next gens of next-gen fighter planes for the United States. Donald Trump was, again, mentioned it in Saudi Arabia, definitely was going to be talking about it in Qatar, and that's what, laying out the groundwork for what's going to eventually happen with Iran. And whether it's they're going to come to the table and negotiate a big, beautiful deal for themselves, or they're going to be put out onto an island and suffer some of the same fates that we're seeing China endure now with the tariff war and Russia in the struggle to end that conflict in Ukraine. Let's hear President Trump talking about the Iranian regime and how the narrative doesn't always have to be doom and gloom when regarding our longtime adversary. Check this out.
Probably read today the story about Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran. And we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's the only thing. It's very simple. It's not like I have to give you 30 pages worth of details. There's only one sentence. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's 2 steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step. Some people do. Many people do. I don't want to do that step. So we'll see what happens. But we're in very serious negotiations with Iran for long-term peace. And if we do that, it'll be fantastic.
I think it will be as well. Remember, no one would have thought 50, 60 years ago that we were going to become super allies with places like Japan, with places like Germany. Moving forward, people don't think that we're going to be ideologically setting up on the same page with countries like Russia, and especially with Iran. But when you look at the relationship between the United States and Japan now, it's not going to be with the flick of a switch, but I could tell you over decades it's something that could definitely turn around. And here's the deal. President Trump does not want to resort to military strikes and violence. He would much rather, and again, he talked about it in his big policy speech in Saudi Arabia last week. We are not in the business anymore of forcing nations to change their political ideologies or implement regime changes and things of that nature just to be able to say that we deal with them in trade or defense or anything like that. We just don't want them to do the things that are harming other people, like the continued development towards a nuclear weapon for Iran, like the funding of all the proxy terrorist organizations, like the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah throughout the region and the world, and their constant threats towards our ally Israel, who was kind of, put on the back burner for this trip. I do think there are some things in regards to the Abraham Accords that are being worked on back-channelly, but in regards to promoting or continually interjecting the relationship and our allyship with our brother in the Middle East, and that's the nation of Israel, didn't really take too much precedent in this. So we were going to get a little bit of the art of the weave, and it was probably one of the funniest instances. So I guess you guys probably saw over the course of the last few weeks, now Mayor Pete is out in like a Bernie Sanders AOC type, town hall. It's like Mayor Pete and Beto O'Rourke, and they go out and there's like a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 Democrats in a high school gym, and they're talking about how Donald Trump is scooping illegals up off the street and deporting them without due process, how the big, beautiful reconciliation package is only going to give a tax break for the billionaires in this country. I want to remind everybody, it's easily Googleable. There's less than 1,000 billionaires who reside in the United States or reap tax benefits from the United States. And I don't think President Trump is working on his most majorest piece of legislation to this point only to appease them. That's like literally quantum retardery, but that's what the Democrats do. They just lie. Medicare, Medicaid going away, Social Security going away, plus threats to democracy, end of the republic, all that other bullshit. But President Trump is not going to allow for Mayor Pete, after the awful job that he did and after getting stomped in the previous primary in losing to Joe Biden, to crawl back into this race through an open door. And while we're focused on winning, not being able to focus on the Democrats at the same time, essentially saying that Donald Trump can't walk and chew gum, when we all know he can. He could walk and chew gum and solve equations on a dry erase board at the same time, in my opinion. So whenever the notion or instance to weave in a little Mayor Pete comes up, well, President Trump is going to definitely deliver. Check this out.
It comes down also, by the way. It's so intense. You see these trees being knocked down like they're being sawed down by a top-of-the-line timberman, like who? Sean Duffy. Do you know that Sean Duffy, the head of the Transportation Department, who's working right now on the airports and getting a system because Biden didn't do a thing for 4 years, and Pete Buttigieg was the head, and he goes bicycling to work. He takes a bicycle to work. Can you believe he's running the biggest air system in the world, and he takes a bicycle to work? And they say he's going to run for president. I don't see it. Who knows, right? But I don't see it. But when I look at what they've done, it's so horrible what they've done. And the work they did do, they wasted billions of dollars. They tried to hook up air systems to copper, and they tried to hook up copper to glass, and the glass doesn't work with the copper. And they had 30,000 different contractors doing 30,000 jobs. And when they put it all together, they spent billions of dollars. It didn't even come close to working. And we're going to be giving out a brand new system. It's very important. We'll have the best system, and we think we know who that system is.
Yeah, I think starting in Newark, they're going to be getting a big upgrade to their air systems over there and their traffic controls after the mess that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Mayor Pete and everybody else kind of left it in shambles. So, done with the press there. back out, Republican Guard on horses and military members with swords and ruby red Teslas and Cybertrucks escorting the presidential motorcade. The Beast made the trip, obviously, so President Trump could get around. Back to the airport, back to the tarmac. Again, lots of love and hug between the leaders of Qatar and President Trump before disembarking on Air Force One and heading out to UAE. So, again, this big trip so far. Scoring deals, making appeals to places like Iran. And when you look at the stats that were starting to line up for President Trump, I mean, I don't know how you can't argue the fact that this is absolute winning. I've got a graphic right here. So, Middle East trip, business deals secured. Saudi Arabia, $600 billion with a pledge to work towards $1 trillion. Also $1.2 trillion from Qatar. That's the largest Boeing contract in the history of the company. And then heading over to the UAE, where he would secure more contracts, both with the airline and the airline company and for defense, $1.4 trillion. So you're talking like just off the bat, over $3 trillion. President Trump said it could balloon to $4 or $5 trillion in American investments. Plus, they will stop manufacturing certain products in their own country and start manufacturing some, like in regards to UAE, aluminum in the United States, and just be doing a lot more business with the U.S. Remember, if they produce their aluminum in the United States, no tariffs, zero. So everybody's making money, and you're creating American jobs as well. Right before the plane landed, Donald Trump came out to, troll the media a little bit, or as I like to call it, meet with the press gaggle on Air Force One. Let's hear that.
So busy. We're landing just about now. This has been an amazing trip. We've raised trillions of dollars of investment for our country, and we're dealing with really good people that have been abandoned in a way by our country and by the United States, and we're not going to abandon. We have very good friends in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar. So now we're going to UAE. We're going to be landing shortly. And we have another really good situation there. But they felt abandoned. They were going to be captured by China from the standpoint of trade, and that's not going to happen anymore. We have a very good relationship, as you probably all saw. Jennifer, I'm sure that you saw that last night. I shook more hands than any human being is capable of doing. That was a long deal, and they were big people. But they were starving for love, because our country didn't give them love. They gave them a fist bump. Remember the fist bump in Saudi Arabia? He travels all the way to Saudi Arabia in that case, and he gives them a fist bump. That's not what they want. They don't want a fist bump. They want to shake his hand. So we had a great. You saw the Boeing order was 160 jets. It's the biggest order in the history, I think, in aviation, certainly of that size. They're all 787s and 777s. Those are the big ones. We really had a good time. Let me just see, where are we? We're about ready to land. So we, very special, very special.
Mr. President, are you disappointed in the level of the delegation that the Russians sent to Turkey?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not disappointed in anything. Who are you from?
We'll get back into that in a sec. Listen. When you look at the way President Trump is handling this, he's bringing the news along with him. And when they get to travel with him, he makes sure he confirms every single thing that he is doing very overtly and by using verbiage as the format to do so. In layman's terms, hey, fake news, do you see I've just secured maybe the largest deal in the history of the aviation industry? The biggest planes, over 160 of them are being ordered by this country. It's going to be trillions of dollars of money for the United States and thousands of jobs for U.S. workers. You are getting that, right? And then when he talks about, the relationship with MBS and how warm and, in a bro fashion, affectionate it is, and then reminds them that Sleepy Joe was left on the tarmac, met by low-level aides to the Crown Prince. And then when they finally met, it was like an awkward rock, paper, scissors exchange, which ended in a fist bump, which shows weirdness, but clearly defines pretty much the foreign policy of what Joe Biden and his team were all about. So they got into the question of Putin, and at the last minute saying that he wouldn't be attending what now are high-level talks between Volodymyr Zelensky and his team, a delegation from Turkey who is hosting, and then some of Zelensky's delegation's Russian counterparts out in the Middle East, which is going on now. We'll have some updates on that throughout the show, but here's President Trump talking about Putin not going.
ABC News.
I'm not disappointed. What would I be disappointed? We just took in $4 trillion, and he says, are you disappointed about a delegation? I know nothing about a delegation. I haven't even checked. Look, nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying. Thank you. You're going to land right now. Thank you.
And we'll get another clarification on that in just a bit. When President Trump arrived in UAE, he was honored with the highest civilian award that they have, and that is the Order of Zayed. It's the first time a U.S. president has received this award in over 2 decades. And to see the way that the royal family in UAE probably saw how warmly welcomed President Trump was, how affectionate the exchanges were between the royal family in Qatar, the royal family in Saudi Arabia. They wanted to meet or even exceed that challenge, and by giving President Trump this esteemed award, it definitely set the tone for the rest of the trip. Let's hear it.
Recognition of President Donald Trump's exceptional efforts to strengthen the long-standing ties of friendship and strategic partnership between the United Arab Emirates and United States of America, I am honored to announce that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan bestows the Order of Zayed upon President Trump.
You got the troops coming in, the higher ranking official, which has it's either the necklace or the pendant, which signifies the confirmation of this award for President Trump. Very beautiful, very gaudy, right up President Trump's alley, to say the very least. And what an honor it is for a U.S. president, again, for the first time in over 2 decades, to receive such a prestigious award. When they went to address the press and members of the Trump team and their UAE counterparts would talk about some of the things in regards to the trade deals, in regards to peace negotiations throughout the region, etc., the topic of Russia and Ukraine came up when President Trump was with Bessent and with Hegseth, so he kind of ran with it and answered the question again. Let's hear it.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Mr. President, no Putin's media trips? No Putin's trips? Are you disappointed by that?
No, I didn't anticipate. I actually said, why would he go if I'm not going? Because I wasn't going to go. I wasn't planning to go. I would go, but I wasn't planning to go. And I said, I don't think he's going to go if I don't go. And that turned out to be right. But we have people there. Marco, as you know, is doing a fantastic job. Marco's there, Secretary of State, and we have people there. But I didn't think it was possible for Putin to go if I'm not there. Jennifer?
Do you have an update?
And that's the thing. You know, Putin wants the FaceTime. He wants the attention that all these emirs and royal princes and kings are getting in the Middle East right now. He wants some of the same things that he's probably seen on television from the large delegation of state officials. You know, the Premier of India, the Prime Minister of the UK, a lot of the different people who have come into the White House and been welcomed into the West Wing and the Oval Office over the past couple weeks and months since President Trump has come back. He wants that as well. But it's not going to be at a time of his demand or choosing. It's going to be at President Trump's. And I think what this meeting in Turkey is going to start right now is the ball rolling, because there was reports that came out today which said that Zelensky, after speaking directly with Trump from Air Force One while he was en route back to the United States, so they are looking to get to a peaceful negotiations as fast as possible. I think if President Trump goes and sees that Zelensky is ready to play ball, and he's been the X factor here, who keeps pulling out of everything in a swift manner, that he is serious about this and kind of glazes over the egos of the Russians to think the same, then you have to believe that President Trump would be open to having some kind of a peace summit where Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin could both appear. Like all good things, though, these trips come to an end, and as President Trump broke that press gaggle and signed the large guest book after landing in UAE, he talked about the possibility, and again, this is President Trump doing the art of the weave of leaving the door open for those peace negotiations. Check this out.
It's a massive project, and it's going to be brought through the United States largely, and it's an honor to be here. And the last 4 days have been really amazing. I think they've been amazing. But it shows you where our country can go. And I want to thank all of my team, Howard, Scott, everybody. They've done an amazing job. So we'll be leaving tomorrow, as you know. Almost destination unknown, because we're getting close. Could you be here? Could you be there? But probably going back to Washington, D.C. tomorrow, some of you.
That's just what President Trump does. Everybody knows it. And probably, just leaves the door cracked a little bit to maybe surprise everybody and show up in Turkey at these peace negotiations. But after leaving UAE several hours ago and apparently not landing anywhere yet, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. So he did talk about trade deals, and another major one would be struck here. And it was going to be that UAE's Etihad Airways would plan to purchase dozens of American-made Boeing aircraft powered by GE engines, and this will be part of the $1.4 trillion investment companies are securing by President Trump during this trip. I've got the clip pulled up. Let's check it out.
General Electric engine is phenomenal. The big body General Electric engine is phenomenal. So it's great to see. Thank you. So you focus on Boeing then?
Yes, sir. And probably
and the GE engines, they burn 20% less fuel, which is really, really important in terms of efficiency and emissions.
It's a hot engine.
So it's a very hot engine.
That's the hottest engine. That's great. 20% less fuel. That sounds good.
Mr. President, we
how many engines will they be buying then ultimately?
About 100. Altogether, about 100.
The big ones.
Yeah, the big
and those, are they the biggest engines at this point?
The 777X, yes.
That's the biggest one. That's the one we're hearing about.
Yes. And it's an amazing plane. We're really excited to announce.
They had a breakthrough, GE, on engines, and their big engine is the hottest engine there is. It's through the roof. And General Electric, you talk about a comeback. General Electric has made one of the great comebacks, and it's both in healthcare and other things, but on your engine, I think that's really maybe the greatest story of them all. They came out with a way to make a better engine with 20% less fuel, and that's a tough combination. So congratulations. I was with Larry yesterday, and he's done a fantastic job.
And great customer service,
yeah,
which is very important for engines.
That's
so
true.
It's not only selling the engine, but keeping the engines running. So extremely important.
Yeah, well, you can be proud of yourselves. So a tremendous investment being made in the United States by this group and this airline, and they don't need financing. That's a nice point. A lot of them say subject to financing. They don't say subject to financing. They have no problem. So thank you very much. What a great honor.
We're also announcing today our first flight to Charlotte.
Oh, good.
North Carolina.
Today, North Carolina.
That's a good place.
Yes.
It's the first airline in the Middle East to fly to Charlotte, North Carolina. So
well, they have the PGA Championship going on there right now.
So today we...
There you go. Lots of moving and shaking going on. UAE is also huge in the production of aluminum. They do a lot there, which, believe it or not, some is sold to the United States. However, with the implementation of post-Liberation Day tariffs, they are staring down the barrel of paying the United States some hefties for importing that aluminum here to the United States. So it was on the heels of the Boeing engine purchases that they would continue to roll out some major deals and investments in the United States, resulting in this big news about the UAE aluminum industry. Check this out.
Pleasure meeting you. Hamid from EGA, Emirates Global Aluminum. Yes. Pleasure. Very good. You do a good job with the aluminum.
This is a very special project.
Here's a big, very special project. Please, go ahead.
Yeah. So, sir, this is UAE technology. Smelters. It's been developed over 35 years. And we're exporting it to the world. And the first big project in our group is the U.S., state of Oklahoma. We're going to invest $4 billion. We're going to
investing $4 billion in Oklahoma, Doug. So if you want to move after you finish with the camera stuff, you can get a part-time job. I don't think you're going to be giving up the camera, right? Go ahead.
So, sir, today the U.S. produces about 700,000 tons. We're almost doubling that capacity in 2030.
So what percentage will that be of the market in the U.S.?
Today, you're importing 4.2 million tons. This is going to be about 40% now with that capacity.
That's fantastic.
And what we're doing, Mr. President, is we're actually moving also 150,000 by the end of this year into recycled aluminum. So we're not just waiting for the smelter to be built in 2030, we're actually building capacity.
So how much will you be spending in the U.S. to make your plants bigger and add the new plant?
Another plant. After we complete 75%, we can look at another investment. We'll probably take another for
the expansion.
The expansion.
Yeah.
It's going to be about another $300 billion because this is recycled. It's a company in Minnesota we bought last year.
Oh,
Mr. President, yes.
See, they're doing all of this work in the U.S. with the aluminum. They do a lot of aluminum here, but if they do it here, they have to pay a big tariff to send it in.
Exactly.
So you know what they're doing? They're building a big plant in the U.S. There's no tariff.
We're exporting 700,000 tons. Now we're going to make it in the U.S.
No, they're going to make it in the U.S. now. So it's amazing. That's
the great thing.
It is amazing when you think about how these countries have, for just the ability to cuddle up to the president, be reassured about defense, get some of these other big contracts secured that they need to continue to expand a lot of things that bring money into the region, like tourism. They are building plants or purchasing facilities in the United States that are going to be refitted, and instead of producing 40% of the world's aluminum in UAE, they're going to be doing a large portion of that in the United States now. And it takes a special kind of businessman to get that stuff done. And I don't think that it's been done in very many contexts that we've seen in the past in regards to all of these individual trade deals and contract securities now. President Trump sat down with the press and members of the UAE business community to field some questions following the tour. And here's what he had to say about kind of a 4-day wrap-up. Let's check it out.
People have said they've never seen anything like's taken place over the last 4 days in terms of investment, in terms of the kind of money coming back into the United States. And all that money, the money is a nice word, but it's really jobs. We have jobs that are at a level that we very soon will not be able to, nobody can duplicate it. And people want to be our partner. They want to be investing in the United States. And they weren't doing that. They weren't happy with the United States for a pretty long period of time. So we've done something that I'm very proud of.
And I think that's an accurate statement there on how proud it was. As President Trump got done and was wrapping up his trip, which ended today, as he's en route to, well, maybe a previously unannounced destination, but in my opinion, they're probably just coming back to the States. He delivered the news, pun intended, of an addition made to the family. And as all good things must come to an end, like this big business trip and diplomatic venture into the Middle East, President Trump would be pretty excited to be heading home because he's added another grandchild to the Trump family. His daughter, Tiffany, and her husband had their first this week, and while President Trump was abroad. And you know how much you could see the way he just lights up when he's with his grandchildren. I know he can't wait to get back to the United States and cuddle up to that big, beautiful baby in addition to the family. Check this out.
It's been a tremendous time, and now it's time to go back home. My daughter had a baby. I'm going to go back home and see that little baby. And then we get back to a lot of work. We'll see what happens with Russia and Ukraine. I think it's something that's just, you got to stop the killing. 5,000 people a week. 5,000 young people a week on average being killed in a war that is going nowhere. It's a shame. Should have never happened. But we have other things to do also. Plus we have an Iran situation, which we're going to take care of. One way or the other, we're taking care of. It'll be taken care of 100%. It'll be done nicely or not nicely. And the not nicely is not a good thing for them. And I think we're talking to them, and I think they've come a long way.
I think they're pretty receptive of what not nicely is going to look like. And that is, in my opinion, probably every single known entity that is tied to their nuclear anything being completely wiped from the face of the earth. So again, masterful masterclass by the president. And boy, did those absolute winning take place throughout the course of the 4-day jaunt to the Middle East. I got a couple highlights here that I know I need to read before we break with North Carolina Congressman Mark Harris, because I saw a post that kind of outlined everything that we've covered throughout the first two segments of our show today. Here we go. President Trump announced the Saudi Arabian $600 billion commitment to invest in the United States, marking an historic era of partnership between our two countries. President Trump also signed an agreement with Qatar to generate an economic exchange worth at least $1.2 trillion. President Trump announced economic deals totaling more than $243 billion between the United States and Qatar, including historic sale of Boeing aircraft and GE Aerospace engines to Qatar Airways. President Trump then announced over $200 billion in commercial deals between the United States and the UAE. In total, and over the course of 4 days, President Trump has secured over $2 trillion in investments and agreements with these three Middle Eastern nations, paving the way for a more safe and prosperous future. That's from the press secretary, Caroline Levitt, great friend of the show here, that put that out so we could highlight everything that we've covered throughout the first edition of our show. As I already mentioned, we're getting ready to jump in with North Carolina Congressman Mark Harris, but before we do, here's another check-in with one of our partners. Friends, I want to take a minute and talk to you about cigars. Whether you're on the golf course, fishing on the lake, or doing some yard work around the house, our friend Alan has got you covered. He's launched the Patriot Cigar Company. The tobacco is hand-picked in the fields of Nicaragua, right next to where Mike Lindell picks his coffee beans. The cigars are hand-rolled, aged 3 years. If you enter promo code STEAK here, you're going to get 15% off your total order. Every order over $100, free shipping, and a $10 e-gift card is included with every purchase. MyPatriotCigars.com, that's MyPatriotCigars.com, a premium smoke for freedom-loving patriots. All right, joining us next on the show today, this big Friday edition of the Steak for Breakfast podcast, he's the congressman who represents North Carolina's 8th Congressional District, which means we're welcoming back Representative Mark Harris. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always great to be with you.
And always a pleasure to host, Congressman. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about, especially up on Capitol Hill, but I do want to start with a little bit of commentary on President Trump's turning out to be a historic trip to the Middle East right now. Listen, whether it's securing defense contracts, investments in America, making sure the region is becoming a lot more safer and secure than it has been, especially in the past 4 years under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, it seems like Donald Trump is hitting all the check marks and beyond. I just kind of want to get your commentary, how you've seen this trip roll out, and what does it mean for the overall global stability and peace in the Middle East regarding the United States?
Well, that's a great question. And to be honest, I think you hit it when you said this is turning out to be a historic visit for the president overseas and for foreign policy. I think if anything is clear, he is restoring what it means to have peace through strength. I think that his visits that he's making, the relationships that he's building, and that's really what all of this comes down to, is I think President Trump is willing to sit down and talk with anybody that he feels like that we can make progress with. He certainly set an agenda early on that he wanted to bring peace in the world. And when you really look at the Middle East, we know that that's a powder keg in every way, shape, or form. And for him to be making that trip over there, sitting down with the folks that he's sitting down with, having the conversations, perhaps even building off what he did in his first term with the Abraham Accords, I think it's historic, and I'm very excited about it, quite frankly.
I think a lot of America is too, but even more so the region. Probably excited, but at the same time reassured that safety and security is coming back on a global scale. I do see kind of like a trend starting to appear, though. You know, once we had Liberation Day in regard to trade and tariff and making that field level and free and fair for everybody again, it seems like Donald Trump has taken a diplomatic angle in the same sense in the Middle East. You know, the idea of Liberation Day was to put China out on an island, bring them back into the global community in a fair and non-stealing of IP, non-manipulation of currency, non-manipulation of the way they kind of set the global market on its ear. And he's using the same kind of a narrative and methodology in the Middle East with security. I was really surprised at the beginning, but now I'm starting to understand when he talks about making places like Lebanon and Syria relevant again, still establishing that strong ties with Israel, but at the same time bringing in those other Arab nations to create more free trade and fair stability in the region. It seems to be putting the country of Iran out on an island, and President Trump does it with incentives, saying like, listen, we'd love to see Iran be a great country, but there's some certain things they can't do, and if they want to be a part of this big, beautiful thing that's going on, they have to come to the middle and abandon their nuclear ambitions.
Well, and I think you're spot on. I think that even an article I saw this morning is talking about someone in the inner circle there to the leadership of Iran is already saying, you know, look, we are closer than you know to a peace deal that would not have any nuclear weapons in Iran. And I think that, you know, when they start coming back to and having those conversations, I think it's working. Look, President Trump is restoring, again, leadership really and leveraging the world power that the United States is. We're no longer a laughing stock like it seemed to be under the last administration, and the respect that America is getting around the world is showing up, and the relationships that he's building is big, not only from an economic standpoint, but is going to be very big from the peace and stability part of it.
Now, in your opinion, I mean, there are a lot of people who look at the country of Iran right now, kind of the extremist nature that they're ruled under, and say there's probably never a day where the United States and Iran share a lot of the same ideologies when it comes to safety and security, maybe global trade and the way things go. But there were a lot of people who said the same thing about that when you looked at the country of Japan maybe 60, 70 years ago, saying they literally attacked the United States. Their ideology brought America into the World War, the second one, which saw us defeat Germany and the Nazis, who were on a conquest to take over the globe as well. It seems like President Trump is just kind of going back and looking over the history book, saying like, listen, coming out of things like the World Wars, like Vietnam, like the Cold War, we've seen the rise of radical extremism, but there could be a day down the road, maybe in the near future, maybe decades from now, where they are back to being one of America's allies. And when you look at the overall good that it would bring to the globe, it seems like the benefits would definitely outweigh a lot of the concerns that people have now as well.
Well, I think that bottom line is President Trump recognizes that as a leader, you have to really deal with a situation that presents itself. And we're living in a unique time in world history and a unique time here in our own country. And thank God the voters in November of 24 put him in the White House and wanted to restore real leadership in Washington, D.C. And I think people are looking at this and really are confident in what we're seeing with the negotiator in chief, as I sometimes call him.
I completely agree with you there, Congressman. Now, listen, I do want to segue and switch gears a little bit. There's a historic case getting ready to be heard before the Supreme Court this week. It's in regards to the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship. This is something that President Trump has said has been weaponized by the radical left, by a lot of these NGOs, these groups that help illegal aliens with the facilitation of prior administrations that have let millions into the country, just wanting to give them instant pass to citizenship. I really don't think that's what birthright citizenship was intended for when the framers and founders wrote it into the Constitution. The Supreme Court's going to weigh in on it in some context over the course of the next couple weeks or so, and just kind of want to get your commentary going into this. Why is it time to attack this issue, and why moving forward could it definitely help solve the immigration crisis we have in this country?
Well, I think obviously he's trying to put an end to the idea that folks come to the United States for vacation and citizenship becomes the result of having a baby here. And that's a real problem. And I think that what we're really trying to get back to, and if I have any hope in what's going to take place, is if we really have those on the Supreme Court who are originalists and really look at the meaning of when things were written, that they're going to understand that that 14th Amendment was really about the babies and children of slaves. That was all happening within that same time period. And to be able to play almost a legal gymnastics game of somehow bringing it into today, where we've got this real problem that folks have come and just feel like because they're born here that suddenly they're here illegally, that they have citizenship, is a real danger. And I think that asking the Supreme Court to weigh in on this is important. The fact that they took the case, I think, is very important and perhaps a good sign that they're going to have something to say about it that can settle it. Now, how they write it and how they position themselves in the end and the timing of it, that's up in the air right now, and we're going to have to watch. As they say, the jury is still out on that, and we're going to have to see what they come up with.
Pun intended. I like it here on Steak for Breakfast. I'll allow it as well. Listen, you guys are working on a ton of stuff up on Capitol Hill that's outside all of the major news that's breaking across the country and around the world. Definitely in regard to the big, beautiful bill that Speaker Johnson is looking to have all finished up on or around Memorial Day weekend. You sit on the Ag Committee. That's one of the big three that were left for markups. You guys completed that task this week. Tell us about the latest there. I mean, I know there are some people who are maybe not together yet on overall spending. I know there's some people on who wants more cuts than might go into this big, beautiful bill. I know there were some people from the SALT states who had some concerns as well. But it seems like as this continues to roll along, the process that is, it looks like you guys are continuing to stick together. And at the end of the day, understand that getting this bill passed is probably going to be the best thing for the country, regardless of just how much stuff we can get into it, and allows you guys to continue with that momentum to continue to work for the country in a positive manner moving forward.
Well, I do think there's no question that the conversations are continuing. There's still tweaking that's taking place. We all did complete agriculture. We finished up a little bit after 10 o'clock last night. After 2 days, we went in on Tuesday evening, and then we finished up last night. I'm pleased with where we ended up on the ag bill. And overall, I think that when you look at the wins that come out of it, education and workforce that I happen to be a part of, saved $351 billion. We were overachievers. Going after a target of $330 billion and hit $351. Judiciary also had a great time in the ways that we really put some things in place that the president needed in place, such as the additional ICE agents, the additional beds that we needed on the border. All of those things are important. And then in ag last night, we were after a $230 billion target. We not only hit that target, but we're also able to find a way to invest $66 billion in resources for America's farmers, who they've been waiting on a farm bill. And this is, as the chairman has called it, a down payment on our farm bill. So very, very excited about that. Obviously, the tax reform, making sure that we get President Trump's tax cuts in place and moving those, that's critically important as well. There are things in this bill, like we've said all along, things that I like, things that I wish could be a little more aggressive. And nobody's going to get everything they want, and I recognize that. But I am hopeful that with the conversations that are going to take place over the next several days, I know it'll go through rules on Monday, and then hopefully next week we're going to see a bill on the floor that we can be pleased with and pass, get it over to the Senate. Only the good Lord knows what the Senate's going to do with it and what tweaks that they may make before they send it back. But we are on track. Again, the Speaker is to be applauded for moving this thing, staying on schedule, getting us where we need to be. And I'm confident. The SALT folks, they're obviously going to have to be dealt with in their concerns. But I mean, the SALT, let's face it. I mean, to go from $10,000 cap to $30,000, that's a pretty generous increase. And I think that everybody within the conference generally recognizes that. And so I'd like to see some more things on Medicaid, maybe not wait 4 years to put the work requirements in place, There's some things like that hopefully can continue to be adjusted, because I want to make sure that we deal with the issues. This is a historic moment. We said that from the beginning. We have a historic opportunity to do some things in this Congress that haven't been done in a generation. And we don't need to squander this opportunity.
No, you sure don't, and I don't think that you guys are doing. You talked about Speaker Johnson's leadership. We do give him a lot of credit here on the show. You know, the more the media and the Democrats continue to ramp up the narrative that the Republicans are falling apart and they're not on the same page regarding this bill, is right before you guys hit a vote, which you will probably see next week, and you guys pass the next thing, which is going to unlock this bill and get it to President Trump's desk at some point in the very near future. Listen, Congressman, you know, there are a lot of people who are talking about the codification of President Trump's executive orders as well. I know you guys are working on a bunch of different things. There's even some people who are already looking at the fiscal year 26 budget as well. But when you look at some of the big executive orders that probably need to be codified into law, especially regarding immigration, how do you think that process is going to hash out? And how do you think Republicans look staying on the same page coming out of reconciliation to start working on some of these as well?
Well, I think it's going to be really important. I had the privilege of signing a letter that we sent to Speaker Johnson earlier, along with 16 of my colleagues, asking the Speaker to prioritize this legislation to codify President Trump's executive orders. And this year, as you know, President Trump signed 147 plus EOs, while Congress has really only sent 5 bills to his desk. So while the president has accomplished so much, we really do need to take these victories and make sure we make them permanent, because if we don't, then we're going to see another Democratic administration perhaps in the future come in and undo all of the great things that he's been able to do with executive order. So look at the things he's done with the reduction at the border crossings, the mass deportations of criminally illegal aliens, the successful trade deals with the UK and China. All of those are things that I think are important. And so you look at DOE savings, you look at dismantling the Department of Education, all of these things that he has done, we really want to just not let those fall into jeopardy. We feel like we need to step up, and I'm hoping when we get through reconciliation, believe me, I realize that's been a big part on the Speaker's plate and everybody else's to get that done. But I think we're going to be ready to roll up our sleeves and get to work, and let's move some more of these things across the finish line. We do recognize some of these things that we are not able to do in reconciliation. We've got to go ahead and pass them out of the House and get them to the Senate. They've got a little harder lift over there because of the filibuster rule they've got, but that doesn't mean that we in the House can't pass these things and get them over there and give Leader Thune an opportunity to get them in front of the rest of the Senate.
Got to see what happens, and I'm pretty optimistic about it as well. Listen, in closing today, I do want to ask you about some of the Trump effect that's been happening in North Carolina. I saw you shared a post this week on your social media talking about just one of the instances on how the Trump tariffs have benefited Americans more than they have the global community over the course of many decades of manipulation and unfair trade imbalance on the global markets. Let's talk about Carolina custom leather and how businesses like that are flourishing again since Donald Trump has implemented these tariffs, and what does it mean for the people of your state and even your district moving forward?
Well, obviously, one of the things that he did that is so critical is he took the lead, and taking the lead in trying to level the playing field so that we have fair trade. That's absolutely critical, and I'm very grateful that he has done it. And it is causing people to be able to make some investments. It's causing people to be able to see what happens when we make it America and buy American. And I think that again, for our area, which we want to see a return to manufacturing that we once had in the 8th District of North Carolina. And I think that allowing these small businesses to begin to take off and those kind of things happen are a real win for the president and for us.
You're right. The least complaints are coming out of the small businesses who are finally starting to do good in this country again. I think that's the backbone and part of the heart and soul of America, and it's definitely something we love touching with you here on the show today. Listen, Congressman, always great catching up with you. It's a busy week up on Capitol Hill. You took some time to share with our listenership. We've got everything live linked in our show description today, including a link to your congressional website. They can check out your newsletter, all the great work you're doing up on the Hill and in district. Where can we find you on social media? We'll live link that as well.
You find me at Representative Mark Harris, NC.
Absolutely loved it, and loved catching up with the congressman who's representing North Carolina's 8th Congressional District, Representative Mark Harris. Thanks for joining us on the show today, sir. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.
Ron, thank you, sir. Hope you have a great weekend as well.
Guys, we're coming back with another all-new edition of the Steak for Breakfast podcast, so sit back, relax,
and let us change the way you consume your news.